April of 1943, a fisherman off the coast of Spain discovered a body floating in the water near the town of Huelva, dressed in a British military uniform, with a briefcase chained to his wrist. What that fisherman had actually stumbled upon was one of the most successful deception operations of the Second World War, a plan so audacious that when it was first proposed inside British intelligence, several senior officers dismissed it as something closer to fiction than a viable military strategy. And yet it worked, reshaping the course of the war in the Mediterranean and saving what historians estimate could have been tens of thousands of Allied lives. By early 1943, Allied forces had successfully pushed Axis powers out of North Africa and were preparing their next major move, an invasion of Sicily intended to open a path into mainland Italy. The problem facing British and American planners was that Sicily was the single most obvious target available, so obvious that German commanders were already expecting it and reinforcing the island's defences accordingly. Winston Churchill reportedly remarked that anyone planning the invasion could expect the enemy to know exactly where it was coming, since even the most casual military observer could work it out. What British intelligence needed wasn't just a plan to invade Sicily. They needed a way to convince German high command that the invasion was going somewhere else entirely, buying precious time and reducing German troop concentration in the actual invasion zone. The plan that emerged came from a small, unconventional group within British naval intelligence, including a young officer named Ewan Montague, who would later become the operation's primary architect. Their idea was to acquire a deceased body, dress it as a British military officer, and plant entirely fabricated but highly convincing documents on it, suggesting the real Allied invasion target was Greece and Sardinia, not Sicily. Then arrange for that body to wash ashore in neutral Spain, where British intelligence knew local officials had close, informal ties to German intelligence services and would very likely share the contents of the briefcase before allowing its official return to British authorities. Executing this plan required an extraordinary level of detail most people wouldn't have thought to consider. The team needed a body of a young man who had died of causes that could plausibly be mistaken for drowning, ideally recently deceased, and without an inconvenient network of grieving family members who might complain publicly. They eventually secured the body of a homeless Welshman named Glyndwr Michael, who had died after ingesting rat poison, a method of death that produces symptoms consistent with pneumonia, itself consistent with drowning at sea, satisfying the medical scrutiny the body would eventually undergo. The team then invented an entirely fictional identity for the corpse, naming him Major William Martin of the Royal Marines, and spent weeks constructing a meticulously detailed false life for a man who had never existed. They created love letters from a fictional fiancé, complete with a photograph of a real British intelligence employee who volunteered to pose for the role. They added an overdraft notice from his bank and a stern letter from his father about frivolous spending. Mundane personal details, specifically designed to make the identity feel authentically human rather than suspiciously convenient. They even placed 2 ticket stubs from a London theatre performance in his pocket, timed precisely to suggest a night out shortly before his supposed departure, and a receipt for an engagement ring, reinforcing the fictional romance. The centerpiece of the deception was a fabricated personal letter, written as though from one senior British general to another, discussing planned military operations in a casual, conversational tone, specifically designed to make the false invasion details feel like an offhand mention rather than an obvious plant. Since real classified information rarely appears in official-sounding language when discussed between people who already know the plan, the letter strongly implied that the invasion of Sicily was in fact a diversion intended to mislead German forces, while the true target lay elsewhere in the Mediterranean. In April of 1943, a British submarine, the HMS Seraph, carried the body to a position off the coast of Huelva and released it into the water, timed to drift towards shore on the currents. Exactly as British intelligence had anticipated, Spanish authorities recovered the body, and despite Spain's official neutrality in the war, local officials passed copies of the documents to German intelligence operatives before eventually returning the body and its belongings to British officials through official channels, seemingly unaware anything had been examined or copied in the interim. The deception worked far more effectively than even its planners had dared hope. German High Command, including senior figures who reviewed the documents personally, believed the letters were authentic, and German forces began reinforcing Greece and Sardinia in the following weeks, redirecting troops, aircraft, and naval resources away from Sicily. When Allied forces launched the actual invasion of Sicily in July of 1943, they encountered significantly weaker resistance than originally feared, and the operation succeeded with substantially lower casualties than military planners had projected before the deception campaign began. What makes Operation Mincemeat particularly remarkable, beyond its audacity, is how thoroughly it remained hidden from public knowledge for years afterward. The operation wasn't declassified and made public until well after the war ended, and even then, many of the specific details, including the true identity of the deceased man used in the operation, weren't confirmed publicly until decades later, following additional historical research and the release of previously classified intelligence files. The man at the center of the deception, Glinda Michael, spent his life in poverty, largely forgotten, and died alone with no family present. In death, without ever knowing it, his body played a documented role in one of the most consequential deception operations of the 20th century, credited by military historians with directly contributing to the success of the Allied invasion of Sicily and, by extension, the broader Italian campaign that followed. Decades later, his grave in Huelva was updated to formally acknowledge his true identity and his unwitting role in the operation, a quiet correction to a story that had, for years, only been told using the fictional name invented for him. What remains most striking about Operation Mincemeat is that it succeeded not through violence or force, but through patience, meticulous attention to human detail, and a willingness among its planners to think in ways so unconventional that senior officials initially doubted it could possibly work. It stands today as one of history's clearest examples of how a single, carefully constructed deception, built around a man who never knew the role he would play, altered the direction of a war. If stories like this, where history's biggest turning points hinged on details most people would never think to consider, are exactly what you come here for, subscribe to The Grave Details, because history is full of true stories stranger than anything fiction could invent.